Martin from the Philippines. We're here in Real Talk Lifeline. Welcome to episode 5 of Podcast Meditations. We're here with Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. So listen as I meditate and share the best lessons that hit me and as I apply it in my life on these lessons that touch me to the core. This is the first time I'm reading Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. So this is going to be a good one. People on video, I'll be sharing my screen. So, boom, as you could see over there, let me adjust so you could read along as I do the meditation over here. So, let's begin. Chapter 5, Armored Mind. Evolutions that were supposed to teach us to be calm, cool, and collected underwater on a breath hold. So this line hit me, especially since I started learning to do ice baths back in November 2021. And part of the training is called breath work. So, the Wim Hof method, pranayama, people with backgrounds on that, you know, so holding the breath is actually, a very powerful training. This is why the line hit me. Our capacity to juggle multiple stressors in an environment that's not sustainable for human life. So I love this line because part of training in life is the ability to handle multiple stressors. So I have a very challenging time handling just one stressor at a time. So this type of training that David Goggins was going through was very intense. Next line. Those multiple stressors had me teetering like a Jenga tower, and I felt like I was about to black out. So, to be fair, this was Hell Week, Buds, or Navy SEAL training. So if you've ever, you know, were under training or multiple stressors to the level, to the degree that you felt like you were about to black out, people watching the live or the replay comment hashtag, blackout below. So my personal sharing on this is I did my first one of my first ice baths. I think it was my second of the year. It's only February 8th, 2025. So first one in January, I did another one after on like a roof deck in this Optima tub with a sack of ice in it. And I was pushing the envelope, so I lost track of time. And as I stayed in that cold water for some time, when I went out, I was about to go into shock. So I felt like I was gonna collapse or black out. So I have personally experienced this. That was recently, just like a month ago. Next line. My mind was spun with those simple toxic questions that never go away. Why suffer when I could quit and be comfortable again? Why risk passing out or even death? So, in this meditation, those thoughts, I learned a term called ego thoughts. They're the thoughts in our mind that pop up when we're in very uncomfortable situations. So, this David Goggins was experiencing this. And we normally think and experience this when we're pushed to our limits. Yes, all the abuse I'd experienced and the negativity I had to push through challenged me to the core. But in that moment, I stopped seeing myself as the victim of bad circumstances and saw my life as the ultimate training ground instead. So this line is very powerful and healing for me because every bad thing that happens to us, a mentor of mine, Tony Robbins, he says, Life happens for us, not to us. So David Goggins' version is life is the ultimate training ground instead. So next line. My disadvantages had prepared me for that moment. Until you experience hardships like abuse and bullying, failures and disappointments, your mind will remain soft and exposed. So I get this line because I'm very guilty of being a thinker, overthinker, and the danger there is to be like this overly intellectual person, but never really experiencing life. So people who can relate, hashtag relate down below. Now, hardships in our life from this line are actually a good thing when we understand it this way. Next line. If you choose to see yourself as a victim of circumstance into adulthood, that callous will become a resentment that protects you from the unfamiliar. It will make you too cautious and untrusting, and possibly too angry at the world. It will make you fearful of change and hard to reach, but not hard of mind. That's where I was. Next line. But after my second hell week, I'd become someone new. I'd fought through so many horrible situations by then and remained open and ready for more. To show him he couldn't hurt me anymore, I smiled back, and the feeling of being on the edge of a blackout went away. Suddenly, I was energized. The pain faded, and I felt like I could stay under all day. Remembering you've been through and how that has strengthened your mind. Pardon, remembering what you've been through and how that has strengthened your mindset can lift you out of a negative brain loop and help you bypass those weak 1 second impulses to give in so you can power through obstacles. Sounds simple, right? It isn't. Very few people even bother to try to control the way their thoughts and doubts bubble up. The vast majority of us are slaves to our minds. The average person thinks 2,000 to 3,000 thoughts per hour. That's 30 to 50 per minute. Some of those shots will slip by the goalie. It's inevitable, especially if you coast through life. So, this line is very critical or key because it helps actually, for me at least, gives me awareness and understanding. These are automatic thoughts, the subconscious mind. So I've been learning this from personal development, seminars, life coaching, psychology. So we have automatic or subconscious thoughts programming. And then if we're not aware of this, these 50 thoughts per minute, 3,000 thoughts in an hour, a lot of them just spew or come out of our mouth unconsciously, or they take over. Could be thoughts of fear, thoughts of doubt, thoughts of worry. So that's the warning over there. Physical training is the perfect crucible to learn how to manage your thought process. Because when you're working out, your focus is more likely to be single pointed, and your response to stress and pain is immediate and measurable. Physical challenges strengthen my mind, so I'm ready for whatever life throws at me, and it will do the same for you. Next line. Checked in with the accountability mirror. Is that really how you feel? Are you sure you're ready to give up? I stared at myself for 5 minutes before I shook my head. I couldn't lie. I had to tell myself the truth out loud. I knew if I quit, those feelings and thoughts wouldn't just go away. The cost of quitting would be lifelong purgatory. I'd be trapped in the knowing that I didn't stay in the fight to the bitter end. There is no shame in getting knocked out. The shame comes when you throw in the motherfucking towel. So here I took a break. Sometimes it takes me two sittings to get through this chapter. So let's flow into the next line. That's what I said to myself while I stared into that accountability mirror. The mirror that never lies. But I also know you well enough to know that you will find a way to get through this. You need to go to the source of all your fears and insecurities. The easiest thing to do is forget about it and move on. Pretend it never happened. To me, the race was life itself. And the more I took inventory, the more I realized how prepared I was for the fucked up events yet to come. So I love this line because earlier, previous lines, they show us what happens, right? It's easy to just forget and move on, meaning never really facing it, never really going to the source of the fear or our insecurities. But the more we take inventory, meaning the more we admit it, the more I admit my weaknesses, right? My mistakes, my depression, my past, how fucked up I was, right? Then I can prepare properly for events to come. Next line. Feeling a third hell week in a calendar year would decorate me with a PhD in pain. So David Goggins went through three hell weeks. Normally you just go through one and then you move forward to hopefully graduate from the Navy SEAL training. Yes, it was miserable, but I fucking loved it. I thrived off of the barbaric beauty of seeing the soul of a man destroyed, only to rise again and overcome every obstacle in his path. So the start might sound a little dark, but it's actually a really good and empowering thing or a line this thing says. I went into a dark place where there was just me and the pain and suffering. I went full caveman. I was willing to die to make it through that motherfucker. When the pain did show up, I told myself it was proof of how tough I was and how much tougher I was becoming. This was no fake it till you make it bullshit. To me, the fact that I showed up every day, willing to put myself through something like that, was truly amazing. So some of you might feel it and can relate. Your own life might be a version of Hell Week, right? So if you feel it, you're getting it. That practice did get me comfortable enough with the feeling of drowning that I was able to endure and pass that test. So, not limited to Hell Week, the Navy SEAL training also had drown proofing or training on different levels. So, what I really appreciate about David Goggins sharing his life, right? Not it's not just a story, it's his actual life experience was there were many moments he could have died and the tests he went through were intense. And I appreciate that. I love that. So I find that very helpful. From then on, the instructors stopped including me in their beatdowns. When the class was ordered to do push ups, sit ups, or get wet and sandy, they'd always exclude me. I took it as a point of pride that I'd finally broken the will of the entire Bud staff. But I also missed the beatdowns because I saw them as opportunities to callous or toughen my mind. So this is where it flips. David Goggins was actually looking for the suffering or the beatdowns. Why? Because it felt for him, or he knew that it would make him stronger, not just his body physically, but his mind. And since he was like top of his class, the instructor said, "Hey, you're having too much fun. Step aside, don't do it." So that's how on top of his class he was. Last line for my journaling: I was looking for an arena that would either destroy me completely or make me unbreakable. Buds provided that, so I could learn to achieve things I never even knew were possible. After graduation, it would be up to me to continue to hunt impossible tasks. So I love this. Let's stop for a moment back here first. I love this because I could totally relate. Now you have your own version of that. So, you know, share that. People watching the live or the replay, I would love to hear your sharings, your life, your personal examples of that. You doing the impossible in your life. It could be walking. If you were on a wheelchair or you had broken legs, it can be your own version. So let's get to the challenge. Challenge number 5. So, episode 5, this is chapter 5. Let's get to challenge number 5. Challenge number 5. It's time to visualize. Again, the average person thinks 2,000 to 3,000 thoughts per hour. Rather than focusing on bullshit you cannot change, imagine visualizing the things you can. Choose any obstacle in your way or set a new goal and visualize overcoming or achieving it. Before I engage in any challenging activity, I start by painting a picture of what my success looks like and feels like. I'll think about it every day, and that feeling propels me forward when I'm training, competing, or taking on any task I choose. But visualization isn't simply about daydreaming of some trophy ceremony, real or metaphorical. You must also visualize the challenges that are likely to arise and determine how you will attack those problems when they do. So my ice bath teacher who learned from like the Stoics, he calls that negative visualization. And I mean that in a good way. So back here, that way, you can be as prepared as possible on the journey. When I show up for a foot race now, I drive the entire course first, visualizing success, but also potential challenges, which helps me control my thought process. You can't prepare for everything, but if you engage in strategic visualization ahead of time, you'll be as prepared as possibly can be. That also means being prepared to answer the simple questions. Why are you doing this? What is driving you toward this achievement? Where does the darkness you're using as fuel come from? What has calloused your mind? You'll need to have those answers at your fingertips when you hit a wall of pain and doubt. To push through, you'll need to channel your darkness, feed off it, and lean on your calloused mind. Remember, visualization will never compensate for work undone. You cannot visualize lies. I love this. Like when he wrote this down. All the strategies I employ to answer the simple questions and win the mind game are only effective because I put in the work. It's a lot more than mind over matter. It takes relentless self discipline to schedule suffering into your day every day. But if you do, you'll find that at the other end of that suffering is a whole other life just waiting for you. I love this line. I'll just repeat it again. Schedule suffering into your day every day. So let's end this challenge number 5. This challenge doesn't have to be physical, and victory doesn't always mean you came in first place. It can mean you've finally overcome a lifelong fear or any other obstacle that made you surrender in the past. Whatever it is, tell the world your story about how you created your hashtag armored mind and where it's taken you. So I'll share mine. Let's end the episode with this. So he mentioned the challenge doesn't have to be physical. It can mean you've finally overcome a lifelong fear or any other obstacle that made you surrender in the past. So, my personal sharing for challenge number 5 is this. So, I'll share my screen again to end this session, and it's this one. So, my sharing here, window up, boom, is this. What did I overcome? Mine would be, there you go. Mine would be my depression. So, this is a letter I wrote to my parents back in 2015. And to just keep the long story short, because it happened back in 2014, I was in a 9-year relationship. I didn't know, other than the mind, because in depression, it also was emotions. I didn't know what attachment, codependence, mental health, emotional health was. So to just keep the long story short, it took me 10 years later to finally get my closure. Now, I'll end with this because you could already see it right there. So, back to me. I totally agree with what David Goggins said over here because I also had to do the work. So, 2014, I was lost in the dark. I started looking for mentors. 2018, I took a leap of faith. I started taking seminars. 2019, that quantum leap. 2020, I did Tony Robbins, a bucket list, another mentor and seminar. I did like an ayahuasca ceremony in 2021, Cambo. I got into ice baths. All that means is I was doing a lot of deep inner work, a lot of ego deaths, a lot of personal development. So David Goggins is right. There was a lot of work, unseen work behind the scenes. So 10 years, people might say that's long. I would say I'm grateful. You know, I'm 37. Some people in their 40s or 50s still haven't figured it out. So I'm here to just share my life, my lessons with you. So maybe you could not take a decade, hopefully just take a few days to figure it out instead. So that's challenge number 5 of Can't Hurt Me. Join again for the next podcast meditations. Thank you. I love you. And there's one comment over here. Cham, thank you. Yeah, schedule suffering. So I just did that last night. I did a personal record. So it took me months to actually break it down. I was going for a sub 1 hour 10K run. And I'm jumping ahead. This is the other challenge, I think, in the next chapters. But there's a part there, like the 40% rule. So it took me July, August, September, and it only took me the last night to finally break the 6 minute mark, 6 minute per kilometer mark. So yeah, I did 10 kilometers. I ran that in under an hour last night. So schedule suffering is a good thing when you read um Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. It's a very good thing. So thank you, Cham, for that comment. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you in the next episode. I love you, and I will see you next time.